Law and Sporter is back on a Thursday night. Justin Watkins is back. We'll ask him about his trip last week. Dan Jacobs, nice enough to return. Judge Dan, for a second week. We'll tell you what Adam Hill's doing in a little bit. Adam's a regular on this podcast. So, Dan, what's going on, man?
Hello. Glad to be back.
We got some meaty topics up tonight. We'll definitely, I think every time you're on now, we have to mention the air fryer. So we'll get to that later on. We got some pictures, and we're going to talk some Wagyu, and Justin will probably talk about some hunting. So what's up, Justin?
I have props as well.
Oh, you do have props. We always need props. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm looking right at an air fryer right in front of me right now.
The Carrot Top of Denver will be in with props later on. So different hair, a little bigger.
Yeah.
Well, that's handy. If you have an air fryer right there, Justin, that could come in handy later on. So,
yeah, I don't know how to use it, but my wife just got it. Just started using it, and she loves it.
Oh, I got to come over. And show you guys how to use it. So we're relaxed.
Yeah, for sure.
He's the air fryer king.
I'll go around the room. I want to hit one of the sports topics of the day. We'll start with Justin. Justin, what do you think of Carson Wentz going to the Colts? Eagles trade him. Eagles get back a third-round pick. They get a conditional second that could turn into a first if Wentz is good and plays a lot and they make the playoffs, and they have to give up a first. So in the end, if it works, it's a first and a third to the Eagles.
You know, I'm not the biggest Wentz guy, but I know more about him than I should just because Matt Hoffman, my partner, is a North Dakota State guy. So he's all about Wentz all the time. According to Matt, this is the best move he possibly could have made. He really, from a Wentz perspective, really won out here. Gets to go back with Frank Wright. The Colts fans are, I'll say his people geographically speaking. North Dakota are mostly either Vikings fans or Colts fans, depending on where you're at. And so he thinks it's a great move for Wentz. I think that it doesn't look like they had to give up too much, although that second rounder, as long as Wentz is healthy, is definitely going to be a first rounder. So a first and a third seems like quite a bit to take on that kind of salary too. I mean, it's clearly a bad contract.
Dan?
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic for them, and they get a former MVP type quarterback going for the coach that got the most out of them. Those guys don't fall off trees, and Frank Reich, he's going to a good team. That's kind of you hope is just a quarterback away, going to a system where he's excelled in, and you didn't give up hardly anything for him. You always give up if you can give up just a couple of draft picks for that type of quarterback. Absolutely, and if he's not playing, if he's not playing up to his the level he should be, then you go to him and you say, hey, we need to rework this deal. So absolutely, that's a home run for them, having to not give up that much. They're half the town here in Denver is like, dang it, that's all they had to give up, because we have Drew Lock, who's terrible. Yep. And we're desperate for a QB. Now we're hanging on tightly, hoping that Deshaun Watson, somehow we can give up half our team for Deshaun Watson on a hope and a prayer.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, and I wasn't sure if Denver was all fired up about Wentz. I like Wentz, and to me, that's nothing to give up for Wentz. And Justin, on the contract thing, that's the going rate for if he's the 10th, 12th, 14th best quarterback, maybe the 8th best quarterback, $25 million a year, $27 million a year. That's the going rate, and you can get out of the deal after a couple of years, so you don't owe forever. I think it's a low cost, and I think the league blew it by letting Wentz go to Reich. Reich's going to fix him, and I think Denver blew it. I think Denver blew it. To me, the Steelers should have been involved. The Patriots are fucking morons for not being involved. There's too many teams out there that need a quarterback or have to make that transition. Like, to me, the Steelers, if they bring back Roethlisberger another year, you're delaying the inevitable. Like, what are you waiting for? Get your next guy.
I mean, you got to acknowledge, though, that it's a gamble there. I mean, yes, you're saying 12th, 13th, 14th best quarterback. Well, last year he was the 34th best quarterback. So, yes, he had a top 5 quarterback season. He had one of those, and it was with Reich. So maybe they could recapture that magic. And certainly the Colts have a better roster around them than the Eagles. So there's reason to be optimistic. But I don't think it's a guarantee that he's going to be a top 15. Now, like I said, if you talk to Matt Hoffman, he thinks he's a top 10 quarterback. He thinks he's just needs to be in the right system with the right pieces around him. And he's watched them all the way through college, watched them all the way through the pros, and certainly knows more about them than I do. But I think in this year where there's going to be a lot of dominoes that fall with quarterbacks, I don't know that he's my number one target. I don't know that he's not my top 3 targets that are going to be potentially out there.
Dan, any reaction?
Well, just to the Roethlisberger thing, they clearly think they've got one more run at a championship with him. That's the only reason they're not in the mix there. They think, they still have a championship quality team. They think they're going to be able to kind of put the screws to Roethlisberger, make him take, bend over and, do whatever they ask him to do, take a really team-friendly restructure and make one more run at a championship. And you don't, Steve, the thing is, you just don't start over when you think you have a legitimate shot at a championship, and they think they do. Now, maybe you think they do, maybe you think they're foolish, but and we're having this argument right now. Like, so Mark Schlereth, the former player, he does our morning show. He's got this kind of ridiculous argument that the quarterback doesn't matter. You got to build a good roster and just kind of put get the quarterback whenever you want, whenever it falls into place. And it just doesn't work that way. And you just don't just give up on a quarterback, and just hope you'll find another one. And, so I can see why, they, until you really think, Big Ben doesn't have it anymore.
He doesn't. He was bad this last year. The decline started. It's time to move on. And on the Wentz thing, Wentz had a bad year last year. The 3 previous years, his quarterback rating was 93 or higher. He threw 81 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. He is going to be a good quarterback in Indianapolis. It's going to work. And I'm telling you right now, in our fantasy football draft, Justin, he will be one of my quarterbacks. So bid me up.
No problem. I love bidding you up. It's my favorite thing to do.
Now, I'm lying because I usually go for the bargain basement quarterback. So in a $260 league, if Wentz goes for more than like $11, I'm out. But I think
bro, you spent twice as much on 40-plus-year-old quarterbacks than I did on my whole quarterback roster. You spent this year on quarterbacks. They were all in their 40s.
It cost me like $13 for Brady and Brees. So when Brady worked out
each. Yeah.
No, it wasn't each. It wasn't each.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, from Dan, who do you think the Broncos should target? Like, I'm hearing things like the Falcons might move on from Matt Ryan. Would you take Matt Ryan for a year or two? No? Better than Locke?
Well, Locke's terrible. Here's the deal with the Broncos. They have to get worse before they get better. Soren Petro was on breaking our hearts like he always does last week, saying the same thing. It's not about tanking per se, but the Broncos have had a real problem. I call it the 3 little piggies thing, right? And how are you going to do your rebuild? Are you going to build it with bricks and so it lasts for a while? Or are you going to do what John Elway did? He built his rebuild with sticks and straw. He sold us on this concept of win now and from now on, and we've always been in win now mode, and so we never really rebuilt. And so we're always in this race to mediocrity here in Denver, and so we're always winning 5 and 6 and 7 games, and so we've never truly rebuilt. So they need to get bad so they can get good, like the Bengals have done and the Dolphins are trying to do. So they're never really been in play, except for when they were in play for Josh Allen and they blew it. They've never been in play for one of the good quarterbacks. And so they need to get in a position. If they think they like one of these young guys this year, grab one of those guys, unless they, actually one of the sports books out there, I think, or one of the online guys, they're one of the favorites for Deshaun Watson. If they can get Deshaun Watson, great. Otherwise, if you like a young guy outside of Justin Fields, good God, don't get Justin Fields. But if you like one of the other young guys, get them. Otherwise, suck it up next year and find the next good guy and then rebuild your franchise.
You know what? I've been dying to get Dan back on a couple of fronts. On the Deshaun Watson thing, after talking to you last week, after talking to Nate Kreckman, who's on another station in town, Dan's on the Fan. Kreckman is over on what, Altitude? Yep. You both telling me the story about the ownership situation with the Broncos because Bolin died. The rest of the family are like, they're all fractured. You got a bunch of kooks in the bunch. The team's going to have to be sold in the future. Like everyone I talked to this week who's like, oh, yeah, Deshaun Watson's interested in going to Denver. I'm like,
so you're a small business.
Come on with the autoplay, stupid videos. Goddamn ESPN. So everyone I talked to this week, they're like, oh, yeah, Broncos, that's a good organization. I'm like, they don't have an owner. Like, do you know what's going on right now? Why would he walk into that? Can you make a defense for this? Why would he walk into that situation?
Well, it's still because they're going to get an owner. What they're selling is they gave their new GM a 6-year deal. And they actually now that Elway's out of the mix, that he's cashed in his golden parachute and he's got his $6 million and he's in California doing whatever. What they're selling is we gave George Payton, 6 years. So they're not meddling. And they've never been cheap. They've always kind of spent their money. Even when Pat Bowlen, so Pat Bowlen had Alzheimer's, had to step away. And they gave John Elway autonomy to always be in charge. He was just really bad at it after Peyton Manning retired, right? He was kind of a big make bold moves guy. When Peyton Manning left and he had to be in charge of a draft and make personnel decisions, he was just terrible at it. So what they're selling is, hey, we have an offense, and they do. John Elway is, tried to rebuild an offense. They have all sorts of young talent on offense. So that's what Deshaun Watson would like. And then they say, hey, we have a really good supposed defensive guru head coach, which is arguable because he's a terrible head coach. So it could be attractive to Deshaun Watson, right? They've got Jerry Jeudy, they've got Cortland Sutton, they've got Noah Fant. Supposedly they've rebuilt their offensive line. They've got Melvin Gordon, they've got Philip Lindsay. It could be really attractive to Deshaun Watson, and they're pitching the idea at least that, hey, we've committed to long-term to the GM, so we have security there. You can trust us. So that would be the pitch.
That's quite the pitch. I'm not buying it. So.
Right. Yeah.
I worry about the ownership situation. I want to know who the owner is. If I'm Deshaun Watson and I don't like my owner now and I don't like the preacher guy who runs it, I need to know who the owner is. If it's some horse's ass, then that's one thing. If, as we talked about last week, if the Fertitta brothers buy it, they're sports fans. They're going to be in it to win it. They want to make money too, but and then Dana White's the head of pro personnel and we're off and running. Then if I'm Watson, I'm going there. Dana White pitching Deshaun Watson, it's done.
Dana White? You think the league's letting Dana White in?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
That's not going to happen.
Yes, it was a strong. He called a media member. He called a media member a douche last week. He's going to be into it.
Yeah.
It was all sarcasm.
Yeah,
it was all sarcasm. Yeah. All right, let's launch into some legal stuff here. Man, should I hold back on the Westgate thing? What do you think? Do we go right into it? Because it's pretty freaking juicy. You know what? I'm going to hold off for 10 minutes. I got to go back to something last night. Maybe Justin's got a take on this. Dan, Rush Limbaugh's dead. I saw that you were making some comments last night. I think they were more along the radio line. So,
right.
What are your thoughts? Were we dicks last night about him, or?
No, actually, you guys got around to it. You kind of, what-footed around it for a little minutes, and I was like, come on, guys. He's the most iconic figure, or not most iconic, but most, lightning rod figure in your profession, maybe ever. Get to the point on it. You guys were kind of dancing around it for a while, and then I thought Petro did a really good job on it, and really was thoughtful and went in depth on it. And I appreciated that. And I thought you guys wound up doing a really nice job on it. So just so you know, on some of these things on the rundown, I will talk about these things on a legal side. I really can't talk about things as a judge on the political side. So what I will say about Rush Limbaugh on this side, from a radio side, what I didn't respect is I had to stop listening to him. I always liked what you guys talked about was like Howard Stern. Some people listen because they, why did you listen so long? I wanted most commonly given. I wanted to see what he would give next. The people that hated him listened twice as long. Why did you listen so long? Answer most commonly given. I wanted to see what he gave, what he would say next. The reason I couldn't stand listening to Rush Limbaugh, and I wasn't one of those guys, I would immediately tune out, is when I listened to Rush Limbaugh, I could immediately tell he would say things that he knew were simply not true. He was manipulating the truth, and quite simply, he was peddling falsehoods, and he was deliberately manipulating people that, quite honestly, he knew didn't know any better. And I simply could not respect that. It angered me and it upset me, and not in a way that I continued to listen. And it was in a way I simply did not respect. And for people in our profession, people I respect, I saw on Twitter, they were like, well, he enabled my station to employ me, and they really respected it. I never had that level of respect for him. I did find some of the tweets kind of humorous, saying, listen, people, this man died. I think we need to treat him, take a minute. We need to treat him with the same level of dignity and respect and humanity that he gave to people like Michael J. Fox and AIDS people and rapists and things like that. So I did, as a radio professional, not on the political side, but as a radio professional, was he impactful and obviously wildly successful? Yes. Did I respect him? I didn't, because I didn't think it was ethical, and I did not respect that.
Justin?
Yeah, I love what Dan said there, and I don't disagree with anything that was said. I mean, ultimately what it comes down to, from my perspective, and this may be more from the political side of things, but I see him as the beginning of gaslighting to the level that we are at now. It was the start of it all. Him and Newt Gingrich, and the whole idea that we're just going to bald-faced lie to people, and then if we just keep saying it loud enough and long enough, that there's going to be a whole group of people that sign on to whatever we say. And I'm not saying that there hasn't been other people on the other side of the spectrum who have taken that ball and run with it too. It's just, in my lifetime, I'm 41 years old. That's who I signify with the start of that in media culture, especially on radio. And so I feel the same way. I didn't respect the radio. I understand why people are willing to pile on when he's passed away based on the way he treated other people that passed away. I'm not that guy, that doesn't do good for my soul. I'm not going to pile on anybody. I'm just going to tell you how I saw his life, and from the little window that I would allow myself to be exposed to, I saw it as the beginning of a gaslighting culture that we've been in for better on 20 years now.
And real quick, pro martini maker saying, but Rush believed his shtick. No, he didn't. He knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't believe his shtick. He loved his shtick, and he knew what it was. It was a shtick, and he knew he was getting over on people, and he knew, as Justin said, he knew he was gaslighting, and he loved it. And you could tell, he had that little twinkle in his voice when he was laying it on thick. And it was sad that many people believed it. And it was sad because it was dangerous. It was so incredibly dangerous. And that's what I did not respect about it.
You're on mute, Cofield.
Good deal. I have nothing to say.
Speechless. Man, 25 years ago, I could have gotten to this point where we made Cofield speechless. I would have been a hockey man, right?
We talked it out last night. All right, so we'll start with Justin on this one. What do you make of what's going on with Ted Cruz and what's going on in Texas? We'll get to the topic we hit yesterday on air, but we can expound on it. But boy, the latest thing with Ted Cruz, goes to Cancun, comes back. Now he's trying to, kind of scrape his way out of this whole thing. This is a horrific look. The whole thing has been terrible, but when one of the big mouths from the state that is just a disaster area right now is exiting the state and then comes back trying to fucking hide it, make excuses. It's awful. And he's not the only politician who does this stuff, but man, it's awful.
Oh man. I doubt I'm surprised he came back. You know what? Because at this point he's had to fully embrace the persona that he's put himself into as a politician. And, is there a real argument that can be made that says, you know what, who cares where he's at? It's not like his boots on the ground are going to make any difference to this situation, right? I can understand somebody having that opinion. I don't agree with it because I do believe boots on the ground in this situation can make a difference, but okay. But under no circumstances is it a good look. Is it smart politicking to abandon your people in this time, right? You got to be trying something. You've got to be standing in solidarity with something and with your people. But does he care? Was it going to affect his ability to win Texas? I just don't think so. Right. I mean, he's just gone full ham, and I don't even know that Texas will hold him accountable, at least not in the short term, although it's trending in the direction that he may be actually held accountable for his actions like this and for his conduct in encouraging the insurrection and backing of, insurrectionists and in impeachment hearings and otherwise. Maybe he will be held to account, but I don't think so in the short term. I wish I was wrong.
Well, I think he got away with all the bullshit up even through the insurrection. And, a lot of people out there are like, oh, his career's over. This could be the end, because this is what actually affects him at home where they have to vote. And maybe people will forget. I don't know if they will. Robert's, one of our guys who's a listener. He moved. Robert, you were out here, right? You were in Vegas, so now you're experiencing the worst of Texas from a weather standpoint. You can see how broken things are there. And, you've got a bunch of politicians all over Texas who have been very interested in being national figures and tweeting bullshit and smartassery. And, now when it comes to see what the hell you were doing locally, if you were paying attention, the state's fucked. So I think he's going to get hit at home. Dan, what do you think? What do you think of what you've seen, especially with the Cancun trip?
Well, again, I won't speak on the political side, but from the legal side, on all these guys that are actually lawyers too. And actually, I want Justin to comment on this, because here's the thing that's been amazing to me. Like, and this isn't something that would get him disbarred, but we have an ethical duty to not engage in deceit, misconduct, fraud, misrepresentation. Like, so for example, on this, trying to deceive and, kind of lie about, well, I was just dropping off my daughters. And then he comes out and says, well, no, the plan was to go and come back Sunday, right? He was lying. Right? He can't do that as a lawyer. He could get disbarred. He won't over this. But as attorneys, like, for example, I mean, to me, for example, the impeachment lawyers, to get up, like the first impeachment trial. Now, you could, as an attorney, you can make arguments that, hey, that's up for the jury or the trier of fact to decide if they buy that argument, if it's a good faith argument, right? There's two sides to every argument, that type thing. If it's a good faith argument, you can do that if it's, plausible, right? What you can't do is lie. And what was stunning to me, particularly in the first impeachment trial, where there were some things that were just flat out lies on the floor of the Senate in front of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And even in the second impeachment trial, we saw some of that. Now, part of that, was why, Trump lost, kind of his whole, impeachment team. And he wound up, with kind of this, a couple lawyers, was because Trump said, the politicians that aren't attorneys, they can lie all they want, right? But barred members, attorneys, they can't do that. But and that's why I want kind of Justin to comment on is, have you been surprised that these guys are putting their legal careers on the line? Like, I saw one of these lawsuits, these election lawsuits, where the judge said, you know what? Not only is this lawsuit out of bounds, but I'm going to decide whether or not I'm going to refer you to the lawyer, to your state bar association for disciplinary proceedings, because this lawsuit is completely without merit and it's frivolous. So I've been shocked, Justin. I don't know about you, like these lawyers that are violating ethical rules for political purposes and lying. And this one right here is towing that line too. That's shocking to me. I don't know about you, Justin.
I guess for my initial impression on the impeachment side of things and the lawyers in the 60 some odd lawsuits that found their way into state and federal courts throughout was, I was actually pretty proud that no established lawyers who really knew their stuff were taking these cases. I was happy that there was some ethical standards that were pervasive through the larger law firms and the big law firms. I mean, he did not have a legal dream team, despite what they called themselves. They had no experience in this kind of thing. That's why they got completely thrashed in every court that they were in, because nobody who had any expertise, any experience, was willing to take on the case. I was also equally proud that Republican and Democrat appointed judges across the board upheld the law with no politics involved. I mean, frankly, from my perspective, the judicial branch of this country saved this country from a real constitutional crisis in the transfer of power. So that's how I saw that whole thing. It gets really interesting when you start talking about the impeachment trial itself, right? Because it's not actually a trial. And where are their state bar ethical guidelines? You don't even have to have a lawyer, right? Somebody else could represent them. It doesn't have to be a lawyer. It doesn't have to have a law license because it's not a real trial. So do the state bar ethics rules bind you in that situation, the impeachment trial? I think most people would say yes. I think most people would say yes, but I don't think it's been addressed. And it's interesting that you talk about the comments that Cruz gives to the media and that they're false. So typically, the ethical rules and rules of candor apply in court proceedings, right? Something I write to a judge or an appearance I make in court or deposition or something connected to the court proceeding itself. But we have seen a movement in the ethical guidelines to say, hey, we got a lot of lawyers who are doing a lot of stuff with the press that's outside of the courtroom, but can affect the courtroom. And so we are, number one, lots of states have stripped away the defamation immunity, libel immunity on the litigation privilege if you're doing a press conference versus a hearing. And some of these states are looking at the ethical rules and saying, are we going to address this? We don't care that they're not filing a paper in court. Are they okay as a lawyer to lie to the press? And some of them are saying, no, it's not okay. We think that's an ethical violation. But I don't think it's uniform.
Well, I was looking at Rule 8.4, which was misconduct. Anything involving, what is it? Anything involving
deceit, dishonesty, right?
Yeah, dishonesty. Just kind of in general blanket rule, which maybe doesn't apply, but that's what I'm looking at. Like I said, he won't get disbarred, but I've always looked at that as you really shouldn't be lying to anybody anywhere. That's always the principle. The way I've applied it is lawyers really shouldn't be lying to anybody, and you could get in hot water. Yep. If I'm buying a car, I wouldn't lie to anybody. If I'm selling a car on eBay, on Facebook or something, I wouldn't lie to anybody because that's how I operate under those principles because I just always have felt that way, but apparently they don't,
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think we always have to represent our profession. And to your point, I'm saying that these things need to be in court, Rule 8.4, that applies for if I go out and get drunk and get a DUI, the state bar can ethically discipline me. They could disbar me, and it has nothing to do with any representation I made in court. It's overall candor and character with the public as a member of the state bar, and having a state bar license is a privilege, right? There's no right I have there, and so I think you're right, and I think that's that should be something that they absolutely address because. If lawyers are allowed to lie to the press under any circumstances, whether they're a political figure or not, it makes it harder for all of us, right? It makes it harder for all the other lawyers out there because now everybody else assumes we're lying too. And that's the whole point of the state bar governing itself is supposed to be to hold itself to a higher standard. You're on mute.
Come on, Cofield.
Fuck. Apparently, I cannot produce this thing and host as well. So I will stop.
You're in awe of the stunning legal brilliance. It's you can't handle it.
I fucking suck. We need a producer. I want to move on to All the Division. Did you guys see the story? All the Division created, and it started with Rush Limbaugh, and then it's turned into this whole genre of TV and radio. Did you see someone step up the other day? An attorney stepped up and said she wants political affiliation to be a protected class. Is this going to happen?
Is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. This is so dumb. Please don't do this. I mean, I get that the polarization of politics has gotten really bad. I do get that. But the way to fix that is not to put them in the same protected class as race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation. It's to hold the politicians accountable that inflame those people through untruths. And I'm not talking just about Trump. I'm not. It happens all the time where they take political rhetoric to a higher level where they're instigating action. And so I don't buy this cancel culture stuff either, right? It's so funny that this is happening. I know you can't talk the politics side, Dan, so I'm going to just talk it for us. The cancel culture is so funny, coming primarily from the party that's about personal responsibility. All of a sudden, when they're being held responsible for their words or their actions that other people don't agree with, and they lose book deals, or they lose money in their business, or they get a bad review, they think it's called cancel culture and it's not fair. But when it happens to anybody else, it's all about personal accountability. You got to be responsible for your actions and your words. I'm not buying into any of that. And certainly a protected class based on political affiliation is a really bad idea to even start a conversation about.
Yeah, and from the legal standpoint, because we talked about it last week with Gina Carano, mainly what the First Amendment protects is what we talked about was free speech is the ability to say what you want, but it's not freedom from consequences. Yes, Gina Carano can say what she wants, and what that means is the government can't come in and stop her from saying that and punish her and stifle that free speech. It doesn't mean that her employer or Disney can say, fine, but we don't want to work with you anymore. There are consequences for that. I guess the only devil's advocate thing would be is that if you are, I'm going to stay away from it. Thank you, Justin, for speaking.
Yeah. That's tough.
I mentioned it earlier. I mean, what a nightmare. It's funny because I assume, I'm not assuming, let's just say many business owners are Republicans, right? How would you like to have to police your office and have complaints all the time about some sort of discrimination, workplace discrimination based on party affiliation? And people are coming to your office and your HR department filing complaints all the time. I would do it on purpose. I'd make shit up. I mean, seriously, it would be fucking Armageddon in every workplace, wouldn't it?
I don't know. This idea is so hard to use as a launching point to a serious discussion about what would be good for the country that I've got nothing else to add to this. It's a bad idea. Yes, we are a polarized nation, and yes, that polarization is getting reduced into violence in certain situations. And when that happens, the political figures that incite that should be held responsible, regardless of party affiliation.
All right. Am I catching up with audio, or am I sort of skipping here?
You're getting
okay
close.
Right now.
Yeah. How about this headline? I thought this was really interesting. I don't know what study this was, but did you guys see this one? That a $1,400 stimulus check will allow 22.6 million Americans to pay their bills in full through mid-July. Where do they get this information from?
I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here and say that because there is a moratorium on residential evictions and defaults and foreclosures, that they are taking housing cost out of that analysis and saying $1,400 stimulus check to pay, your power and your phone and, I guess your cable could maybe buy you a couple months, 3-4 months. But man, I'm really stretching to try to find how they think that $1,400 is going to get you 4 months of bills paid.
It's craziness. It's craziness. And it goes back to
they're just out of touch. They're just out of touch.
Yeah.
Well, they did say only 22 million Americans, right? So they might be picking the 22 Americans that are already on complete government assistance and food stamps. Maybe that could be the other angle there, is that they picked the people who have already have the necessities covered, not necessities, but some bare necessities covered by the government. That could be their other angle. 22 million Americans isn't that many Americans.
All right, up next, this one. This is pretty juicy. The Westgate Superbook goes after Barstool. Trademark infringement. The statement that Barstool, I guess, started using, or the phrase they started using, was "good teams win, great teams cover." Westgate sent him a cease and desist. So you love talking trademarks, Justin. You love talking trademarks. Let's do it.
Yeah. My past life in law school working for an intellectual property firm before I realized I don't ever want to do this kind of work. I remember those days often, and I filed a number of trademarks and service marks. Technically, this trademark here was filed by Westgate in 2008. I believe that's right, 2008. So it's 13 years old now. And there is clearly no dispute from Barstool that they are using the exact same language as the trademark language, and they are aware of the trademark. They are playing with fire here because this thing's more than 10 years old. Clearly, the United States Patent and Trademark Office, their first screening of any sort of trademark is this commonly used? That's their first analysis. Is this commonly used? Then they look into all the other prior filed and say, do we have anything else that's already on file? That's it. They don't go too much further than that. And then they say, cool, you've got a trademark. So at this point, it's presumptive that Westgate has the trademark, properly has the trademark, was first in time, and it would be up to Barstool to prove that's not the case. And they can't just prove that somebody else said it before Westgate. They have to prove that somebody else used it in commerce prior to Westgate. And hey, if they haven't done that research and they're just being this bold, wow. If they think that they've got some smoking gun on this, that they can prove that Westgate doesn't have the rights to it, okay, we'll find out. Because I'm certain Westgate's not just going to sit by and let this happen. They're gonna file.
Dan?
The only thing I can think of is, certain companies like to kind of push the envelope up to a point and then just back off. They like I worked for a guy one time. Is like, they would use the Rockies name or this, that, or name, and they'd say, well, we wait till we get the third letter and then we stop. And then 6 months later, we do it again. And then this and that. Maybe Barstool's doing that because it doesn't seem like Westgate is like rushing to file this minute, right? They're saying this is the second time we're doing this. And then, because Westgate has to, I would assume they want to, they have to show damages too, right? They have to say, you're damaging, proving it's one thing. And then they have to go through the analysis and prove damages. So, that's one analysis that goes into the calculation. And so probably Barstool's just jerking their chain, and at some point they'll back off.
Yeah, but this is the interesting part. It's not like Barstool's just some insolvent guy in a parking lot making Rockies t-shirts, right? It's they've got money. So, I mean, it's something to go after, and proving damages. Yeah, I agree. That's going to be somewhat difficult, but here's the thing. Barstool just got into this business, right? And they just started using this slogan. And so if I'm the attorney for Westgate, I say all of your profits are derived from this slogan, right? Prove me otherwise. It's the only thing you've used since you started. You stole it from an established company to try to milk off of us. So it's reasonable for me to say every dollar you've earned would have been a dollar I earned. Now, we know that's not true, but it's a hell of a scary start.
That's intriguing. And yes, for people who haven't been following, Barstool is the branding on Penn National. So, and we've already had one weird case with the Barstool book with the Jose Canseco fight, where it looked like he took a dive. They were going to investigate it. There's been refunds, payment stuff. Dave Portnoy is he's a smart guy. We'll say he's a wily guy. Is his legal take on this pretty solid? He says, by the way, there is literally no chance they invented that. That's like saying you invented the question mark. Will that go over with a judge?
No, right? If it was that absurd, the initial review by the United States Patent and Trademark Office would have rejected it. If you try to get a trademark on the question mark, you're going to get rejected. It's not going to happen. If you try to get a trademark on the or God or Bible or something that's just common word, you will not get a trademark. They don't just rubber stamp these things. It's not far off from a rubber stamp, but it's not a rubber stamp for common language and common usage. So they do review that. And it's interesting because he is now admitting that he is aware of this cease and desist letter, and he's continuing to use it moving forward. And so the argument would be the actions are willful and could line up for punitive damages. And the punitive damages do not have to have a basis in real damages. I don't have to prove anything, right? I don't have to say that. You have to have some actual damages. Some. It can't be zero. But for punitive damages, I can go after you based on your value, not based on what the actual financial damage was to me. So it's very interesting. Now, all of a sudden, I want to do a billboard that says, good attorneys win, great attorneys cover. What do you think?
Sure.
Well, I would ask you, Cofield, do you think that's so common? I mean, I don't know that I've heard that a million times. I don't know. Like, do you buy that argument by Portnoy that everybody and their mother uses that phrase commonly?
I think people have used a version of it, but I don't know that that's some sort of a common phrase. So it's pretty unique. So I don't. I'm not going to call him a liar, but I don't think it's a common phrase.
And so, Brady, to answer your question, I believe you need a unanimous jury. It's federal courts, federal action.
Yeah, frankly, I didn't know that it was property of Westgate either, but I also haven't used it. So, I think the other thing that's interesting in his tweet, he says nothing makes me more confident when other gambling companies like Westgate Vegas start sending us cease and desist. I don't know that Westgate's really a gambling company. Justin, you're familiar with the Siegel Group in town. I'm guessing they don't mind being litigious.
Yeah, I agree.
Like this isn't some gambling company. Like this is owned by a pretty big corporation, and I'm sure they have to fight these battles a lot. I'm sure their legal team is pretty freaking solid.
Yeah, I tend to agree. The only thing that was sad for me to see was that they have counsel out of Tennessee instead of out of Vegas. It's like, come on. If we're going after some gaming stuff, come on, hire the local guys. Let's go. But I guess the local guy in this particular instance might be New Jersey. But I think that they're not playing around. I think that they know what they're doing, and it's something I would stop. What's funny is when I started Battleborn, I got a cease and desist from somebody who had used a RAM in their legal advertising at some point. And you see how that went.
Yeah, that didn't work. Sean, who's usually I don't think Sean's in here tonight, but he had sent me a tweet a couple days ago about this. He said, owning a federally registered trademark creates a presumption the trademark valid and protectable, but this presumption can be rebutted by showing prior use in commerce by others or use in common parlance like Taco Tuesday. So does that go back to what Dan said, that this is so common that they don't have a claim to it anymore?
Right. If you could show that this phrase was commonly used prior to the trademark, right? Sure. It can't be that the trademark made it. Well, that's not true either. Let me step that back. You can lose your trademark rights if what you trademark becomes so common and you never protect it. So I'm going to try to use an example that has not, like, let's say, how everybody stole got milk and started using got whatever, and it became really well used. They didn't lose their trademark rights there, but in theory, something like that could happen.
Xerox or tissue or something, right?
Right. Kleenex, Xerox, Thermos. These are some of the major examples where people don't know that it's called a vacuum insulated bottle. They just call it a thermos, right? And Thermos was the original. That's the brand name. And that one actually went into court. And what came out of it was only Thermos can use the capital T. Everybody else has to use a lowercase t. So that's how you'll see the real Thermos with the capital. So you can lose your trademark rights if you don't protect them. But generally speaking, if you're going to say this is a common phrase that's used everywhere, well, that common phrase, you're going to have to show that existence prior to the trademark, or if it's after the trademark, that it was after the trademark and they weren't attempting to protect their rights. They didn't sue all these people. They didn't go after them, you know.
But if they showed it was heavily used prior, then maybe he had a case, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But
in commerce.
Right. I guess I lived there 20 years ago. That's why I was asking Cofield. I don't remember that ever being some big deal phrase. Do you,
I never
Steve?
heard it before this. I didn't even know Westgate used it.
Yeah, me either.
I had no idea, but well, then it's not that common, and they get a trademark, so they have the right to it. Correct?
Yep.
That's the way it goes. Justin, you and I were talking about the Buffalo police and the old man who got knocked over, 75-year-old who got knocked to the ground. One of the cops, reached down to him. Another cop said, "Get away from him." And the images of him knocked out, bleeding out of the ear. So let's review this again. They dropped the charges, right? That's it. Those cops are good to go. Now, what could happen on the civil side?
Yeah, they can make a civil claim. We could do, the victim could make a civil claim in both state and federal court. State court would be, your common sort of claims of assault, battery, and the federal claim, in theory, would be a 1983 claim, which is a violation of civil rights. You'd say that you impeded my ability to exercise the First Amendment and peacefully assemble. And so I would expect you're going to see a civil claim, no doubt about it. There's going to be somebody who's willing to take on that case, and I would expect it to be successful, either through settlement, resolution, or otherwise.
And we also detailed the head of the PBA locally came out in a very celebratory fashion, saying that the guys are cleared. We're so thrilled they're back on the job, and just how damaging that can be in a community when that's not the police department, that's the union. How damaging that can be in a community when it appears the police come out and say that, like, basically, fuck that guy. We won. We were right. They're coming back.
Yeah, I mean, from the public servant side of things, if I'm an elected official in that state or that city, I'm just like, come on, man. This doesn't help, right? You're throwing gasoline on a fire and you're keeping this in perpetual motion. We're going to have more clashes with the police. We're going to have more demonstrations. We're not going to come together as a peaceful community when the union, I know they're not speaking on behalf of the police department, but they're speaking on behalf of the members that make up the police department, and it's just not helpful. I would hope that you would get some public officials out there saying, please, don't do this. This isn't helpful. And if you keep fanning the flames, then when you come to me and you want me to address your concerns in some legislation or ordinance, I'm probably not going to listen to you because I don't think you're a reasonable minded person. I think you gotta hold people accountable like that.
Even I would think, is even the most ardent back the blue people in the public, are they cool with having to pay damages on this? Like, they watch that whole thing go down and they're like, yep, you know what? I support him so much. Use taxpayer money. I don't care. Fuck my money.
Blame the lawyers, right? They're going to blame lawyers like me for taking on the case and say, oh, everybody's going to go get a lawyer and they're going to sue us. These blood-sucking lawyers are making us pay our taxes. And, guys like me become the enemy for representing, elderly man who got shoved to the ground and is bleeding from his ear.
Dan, do you have to stay silent on this one? You got some thoughts?
Well, I will tell you from a legal perspective, I'm not a fan of qualified immunity because it does protect, and you can, if you show a high enough level of misconduct where you can say this was so far out of bounds, it was so far outside of the scope of the officer's job, then you can get around qualified immunity, but it's so very hard. And I'm just not a big fan of it because you got to hold people accountable. And I preach constantly, the best way to affect change is voting. I wish people would take that very seriously, but also secondly, jury service. You got to find courageous prosecutors that will charge, people that officers that assault citizens, police brutality. You got to find courageous prosecutors that assault, and if not, vote those. If they're elected, vote them out. But when you get on a jury, people so often they want to get out of jury service. Like, oh, can I get out of here? They'll do anything they can to get off a jury. It's so vitally important. It's 1 or 2 days or however many days it is. Get on there, take it seriously, take the reasonable doubt standard seriously, and apply the law. And that's important. That's how you affect change. If you're unhappy with the system, don't rely on politicians to do it. That's the best way that you can, in real terms, affect change and hold people accountable. So that's my speech, my soapbox I always get on. Those are your 2 ways you can do it. Vote, hold people accountable. If you don't like Ted Cruz going to Cancun, vote him out. Or you don't like the politicians lying and doing this and that, vote them out. And if you don't like police misconduct and things like that, get on jury and hold them accountable.
Amen. I can't co-sign on to that any more than I possibly can, and what I'll say is, there's some wise political or legal minds who have put into words and way better way than I'm about to, but basically says jury service is the 4th branch of government, right? It is the ultimate equalizer. It is the time in which the community sets the standards by which it wants to be governed. And so I sign on to that 100%. And I would be interested, Dan, too, is the people that you've encountered that want to get off the jury and then ultimately have to do the jury service. Typically, how do they feel afterwards?
I think people, well, some of them, they're just mad, and and that's dangerous because they don't want to do the verdict, right? They're just get out, and they get mad when you want to have to deliberate and things like that, and that's dangerous. You got to take it seriously, and for the most part, people do. They want to apply the elements of the law and things like that, and that's good. That and that's encouraging. But people that just like they don't want to be on the jury, then there's they don't, they want to rush through deliberations and they want to get out of there. And it's like, if you believe in this country and this is a great country and this is the best, I believe it is the best place in the world to be. For everything that's wrong right now, and this is certainly a very tumultuous time, this is still the best place in the world to be, and that's one of the reasons why. Actually, I was arguing with Mark Schlereth. I like Mark, just to kind of get back to sports a little bit. Mark Schlereth, I've been killing him. He has this ridiculous premise that only players, the only people that play in the NFL can have an opinion on sports, on analyzing NFL stuff because they played, and only they can watch tape. And he said, I can watch Law and Order, but that don't make me an attorney. And I said, what's funny about that? Actually, you know what? After a jury trial, who makes the ultimate decision? It's a juror, and juries are made up of lay people. So take it seriously. It's awesome. It's awesome that our justice system is made up of people like you and me and lay people, like people like Cofield. Although that's a little scary, but it's kind of an awesome thing.
Very level-headed.
Yeah.
Question here from Brady about, have you ever held any in contempt for trying to get off the jury intentionally or seen it, Justin? So Judge Jacobs, you want to answer that?
Well, the craziest thing, man. Oh man, I still get upset thinking about it. So I had this. So as a lawyer, I was in a small town, and the only witness for the prosecution was a cop. He was, he was the star witness for the side. He was related. It was a small town, so he's related to two of the potential jurors. And I'm trying to think how this went. So I'm in this little, this little chess match. So I'm trying to get these. He's related to two of the potential jurors. So I'm in this chess match with the prosecutor, trying to get these people, kicked off. And so, I'm talking to this one guy. I'm like, how are you related to, this cop? He's like, well, he's my uncle. And I'm like, oh, well, do you love your uncle? Yeah. You'd do anything for him, wouldn't you? Yeah. And you're going to believe anything he would say. Yeah. Right. If you were a defendant, how would you feel if the other side, was related to the cop? I wouldn't think that'd be very fair, wouldn't it? Right. This is, you're pretty biased, aren't you? Yeah. You think you should be, and then the judge is like, well, he didn't say he couldn't be fair though. So I'm using all my challenges to try and, so get these people off the jury. And then we, so it's completely insane. Then we go to lunch, and then the judge excuses all the rest of the jury pool. We come back from lunch, and one of the 12 jurors says, I'm crazy. I can't be on the jury. Mistrial. And I had the jury I wanted because it was made up of people like that looked like my defendant. I'm like, okay, I can win this trial. One person says, I'm insane. I can't be on the jury, and it's a mistrial. I said, well, that's fine. We'll do it with 11. And the prosecutor's like, nope, can't do that. Can't do that. I'm like, no, I'm the defendant. I get to do it. You don't get to say, prosecutor. And it was a mistrial. I was like, dang it.
That's tough. Yeah. I've seen it. I've seen one, actually not as a lawyer. I was in the jury box myself, as a potential juror, and I was still a lawyer at the time. And one of the people got up and said he couldn't, I'll never forget this. He couldn't serve on the jury because the PlayStation 2 was coming out the next day, and he was going to go stand in line at like 4 a.m. and he was going to buy like 25 of them and then sell them on eBay for like 3 times the price. And that was going to be his primary source of income. And, the judge wasn't having it, and he got a little lippy, and he got thrown in jail. 24 hours. Wow. I mean, it escalated beyond just explaining, the PlayStation thing. Yeah, so I saw it, but funny enough, it wasn't as a lawyer. It was as a juror. I've had like wonderful experiences here locally as a lawyer dealing with jurors. I've had a number of different people who didn't really want to be on the jury. They weren't antagonistic about it. They have things going on in their life. They're students, or, they're the sole breadwinner of the family. And it's not that they didn't want to take it seriously. It's just that it was inconvenient for their world, and that they had to serve anyway. And at the end of it, they were glad that they did. They were a little ticked that they didn't get kicked off, but at the end of it, they were glad for the experience and thought it was great. But I've also heard some horror stories. There was, when I was in law school, there was a young lady that I ended up knowing, worked in a class with her on a group project, and she was about a year and a half younger than me, or older than me. And I said, oh, so you didn't go to law school right away. You worked. What'd you do when you worked? She's like, no, I was on a jury for a year and a half on a sexual assault abuse case at a childcare center with over 200 victims. The jury, it took a year and a half. And so she had to put her whole life. Crazy.
Wow. By the way, Aaron, I wouldn't worry about that. You will be rightly accused. I'm pretty certain of that.
One more police department story. This one's crazy. In St. Louis, where they've had so many of these incidents, headline is St. Louis to pay $5 million to black cop who was beaten by officers while undercover as a protester. So what do you make of this one, Justin?
Well, I'm glad he's getting paid. I think it matters that he's a cop. You have to put all that stuff into consideration. And if I was the plaintiff's counsel and I was representing a true protester, a BLM protester, I don't think that they would have agreed to pay out $5 million. I don't think that they would have agreed to pay out $500,000. I don't think they would have agreed to pay out $5,000. I would have had to fight tooth and nail all the way through. And is that wrong? I don't know, because it all matters, right? The client's credibility is the case. And if your client does a job that people tend to believe, if I represent a doctor versus a store clerk, I know I got that built into my valuation that the jurors more likely to believe a doctor than they are a store clerk. It's not right, but you got to be aware of what human nature is, and you got to give your client the best legal advice you can as to what the value of their case is. And so, a big part of me says, the cops got taken care of again, even when they didn't get taken care of. But I do say, from the defense side, if I was trying to defend that claim, that I'd be in big trouble and that we need to pay out here because the jury's going to believe this person.
All right. We'll have Dan stay on the sidelines for this one. So let's close on this. We always like to talk food, or we often talk food on these podcasts. Dan came in and knocked me around. I bring the guy in as a mentor to kind of teach us about barbecue and meat and the likes, and we've got this whole crew of cooks and chefs and people who are intense about the smoke game. So Dan introed himself last week, and he's been busting my chops ever since. He put up a video the other day about making his stew meat, and made sure to throw in a mention about the air fryer. Dan was listening. I think we played that on the Wednesday show. So this is a question we've had in the past. I want to ask you about Wagyu, but I know, Dan, was this real? You went out? Did you actually go out to a butcher or a meat shop and start busting chops?
Yeah, this was awesome. Awesome on two fronts. So, I mean, I didn't go specifically to do this bit, but I was, because my daughters were wanting to go to a store. I'm like, I'll go over. So we have a real fine meat shop, Sam's Meats. And so I'm like, I'll go in there and kind of, see if there's something nice there. And, my daughters can go over, to the thrift store that they wanted to go to. And I said, because the bit was, so I was on last week and we're talking about air fryers, and which is, they're fine, whatever. And Steve is like, yeah, I put a steak in there. I'm like, whoa, what? What are we talking about here? We don't put the steak in the air fryer, man. It's against the code.
Justin, you know where this started, right? With Adam, and we put the picture of Adam's air fryer steak up there, and it was quite peaked looking.
Right. But you didn't say Adam did it. You said you did it.
I have done it. Yeah, I've done it to try it. I've done it. I've even done it just to get the steak started, and then whatever it is, what is it, reverse sear, whatever. I start it, get it up to 80 degrees, and then throw it into a cast iron skillet.
So I'm like, yeah, no, that can't happen. I mean, it's not acceptable. And so I've been busting Cofield's chops on it. And so I'm at this meat shop yesterday. And so they have, Wagyu is pretty much the best meat you can buy, and they have this case in a, case full of this Wagyu. And so I just kind of hit record on my phone. And Steve, so Steve puts Kobe beef in this air fryer. So I asked this guy, who's working the counter. I said, hey, can I ask you a question? And he's like, yeah, man, what's going on? I said, could I put this Wagyu, can I put it in the air fryer? And he's like, well, he's trying to be nice. He's like, well, you could, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, that ribeye, could I put the Wagyu ribeye in there? And he's like, are you really stuck on the air fryer, man?
Yeah, no.
I was like, well, I was just wondering, could I put it in there? And he's like, man, I wouldn't even know how to do that. He's like, to be honest with you, it's he says, you're gonna hate me for saying this, but your air fryers are corn dogs and French fries, man. He's like, and then it was funny because like there was like this meathead behind the counter. He goes, dude, you should put that in the deep fryer. Like a Wagyu steak, like $36 a pound. He's going to deep fry it. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, man, that guy, he put a whole prime rib in his deep fryer. And I'm like a turkey? He's like, yeah, dude, it was awesome. I'm like, I'm sure it was, man. Yeah, he deep fried a whole prime rib. I'm like, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm glad I did this.
This is a joke here. Adam invited me over for foie gras and lobster tail in the air fryer. Adam actually did start to flip out. Was it on yesterday's show or the day before? He does not like to cook. He doesn't trust himself to cook, so that's why he did the steak in the air fryer. He was complaining that our local grocery store, Smith's, is different than an old place called Fresh and Easy, right? Fresh and Easy used to have, there's food there. You just go heat it up. So Smith's has these food packs where all the ingredients are there, but you got to cook it. And he got home and he was like, wait, I got to cook this? Like, fuck this. I don't want to do this. Like that's the level he's at. I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, and so I don't get blamed because I use the air fryer. But just so you know, we're the bottom of the barrel on the chef's list on Cofield Company.
So my wife the other night was like, make dinner. And I'm like, we got something in the freezer. I'm like, what the hell is this? And I remembered, I'm like, oh yeah, these were freaking disgusting. And I was just going to throw them out. And then I'm like, oh no, we got to get these on the show. These air fried chicken tenders that were completely disgusting. And they just got thrown back into the freezer, never to be eaten again. Not even the kids will make them. You got
to bag that up, get it in a box with some whatever.
75% less fat and taste.
Yeah. Well, you got to,
I will say my wife made some wings in the air fryer the other day and they were really good. I was a fan.
Well, here's what I don't understand because so my boss, who's the program director, he was trolling me too after I was kind of getting on Steve's business. So I don't know if there's a difference because he has he put a steak in there and kind of sent me a video. Is there a difference between the ones with the handle that look like a fry basket? Because his was sizzling pretty good. Mine's like the one with the racks. And I don't know. I haven't been that impressed with it, but is there a difference?
I don't know. I think they're getting better. We bought one. Or I got one for Christmas, believe it or not. It's a Ninja Foodie, and it has a grill feature on it. You're right. It's not a great way to cook a steak, but other stuff does work. The wings work. By the way, if you're on the chicken finger, like for real chicken fingers, Costco has great ones. Like they're a little more expensive, but they're really good. And actually, do you have Trader Joe's up there? You must, right? Yeah. So Trader Joe's chicken fingers are pretty good. And you just throw them in the air fryer. They're mostly cooked anyway, so. Chicken finger expertise, I'm good on that.
I bought like a real expensive air fryer. Yeah. I bought like $200 or something. Like it wasn't like I bought a cheap one. I just haven't been that impressive.
Where's your air fryer? You gonna grab it? You gonna grab it?
Mine? Oh, it's literally right here. I'm looking right at it. Hold on, I'll flip my screen around.
Could be trouble.
There we go. It's the Ninja. Yeah, there it is.
Boy, look at that thing. Yeah, so that's got you pull the basket out.
Yeah, it's got the handle.
Yeah, it's got a picture of the steak. Yeah, so check it out though. All right. It's got steak right on the side.
Well, you got to do a steak then. You got to try it. Do a cheap steak. Do a cheap steak.
Dude.
It's got the that's a grill right there. That'll help.
I'm not doing the steak, bro.
You got to do one steak. Do a little cheap steak.
No.
Yeah, get the Wagyu.
You know what? Next time we're at the Battleborn Broadcast Center, you bring that in. I'll bring you just the steaks that we got from what was it called? Now I'm forgetting the meat place that we pitched forever. Where is it here? Meet up. I have it on here. Here it is. Yeah.
Don't you have any venison or something you shot and killed or something?
Yeah, well, I got a freezer full of steaks. Yeah, I've got a freezer full of steaks. I could.
But you wouldn't put venison in there. You're joking, right?
Why not?
Oh, you would?
Why not?
No, I wouldn't put any steak in there. But whatever. I mean, there's some there is some when you. It's funny that they mentioned Roadkill Grill. I get my meat processed at John Bull's Steak. That's who's the Roadkill Grill. It's the meat processing side of Roadkill Grill, and so a lot of times there's this meat that's sort of kind of left over, and that becomes your stew meat. It's not your prime meat. It's I wouldn't even put stew meat there. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen to it. I don't know. Maybe I try. Put some antelope in there.
By the way, I got screwed by Cofield and Company, and I took your guys' advice. So I did. I was doing stew meat, right? So I had like a 30-pound chunk of stew meat. I did my way, and then I had last night. That's why I was listening to the podcast last night with Petro.
Yeah.
So I did it my way, and then McMillan and the Cofield listeners were like, "Oh, you got to sear it up." So I had another 20-pound chunk of top round. I cut it into individual pieces, and I floured it with the seasoning, and I fried it up before I then was going to braise it. I was doing it all night long, and it kind of dried up a little bit. It was still okay because I just put it in gravy all night, but nah, man, I got suckered. I got fish hooked. Shouldn't have listened.
We try things.
Here's the kind of stuff you get from this is elk right here. Jalapeno, and cheese, salami, and it's an elk log. Well, I shot the elk, and then I had John Mull's meats.
Bambi?
No, he's a big elk, but so it wasn't Bambi. He's an old guy. John Mull's Meats does the game processing.
You bring the whole animal in. What part of the animal do you bring in?
Well, I'll try not to make this a long story, long boring hunting story.
You pull up with a pickup truck and you're just like elk, 50,000 pounds, whatever they are, 5,000 pounds. You do
500 pounds, man, not 50,000. 5,000.
So like,
how big are they?
Elk is a big ass animal, right? Like this guy had to have been somewhere between 600 and 700 pounds. He was a big elk, and you cannot. I shot him at the top of the mountain. Move him. So we quarter him in the field. Yeah, we butcher him in the field into big movable pieces. The hind quarters, the front quarters, the back straps, the tenderloins. Right. So it takes a couple trips to pack this animal down, and then the head. So then by the time we get to the truck, we've already got all these hunks of meat in big old chests of ice. And then we drive it down to Vegas. We go, here's the meat. He throws it up on the hook, takes my order. How much salami you want? What kind of pepperoni do you want? What do you want? Brats? You want, what do you want? You want me to throw some pork? It's awesome, dude.
I didn't know about this. Might have to go hunting now.
Well, and most
hunting. Yes.
I will literally, the only thing I will be able to bring in, I will literally bring in roadkill. And his place is called the Roadkill Grill. It'll be a nightmare.
It will look exactly like, you know what it will look like? Wedding Crashers, when it'll be Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, like just, looking around like with the hats and no idea what they're doing. That's what it would be.
Yep. I'm lost. Totally lost.
Oh my God. Yeah. Lawrence, Jay Lawrence, I've got a picture of this elk hanging on my steel frame backpack. It was so goddamn heavy that halfway down the mountain, it was 2 miles up in the mountains. Halfway down the mountain, it snapped the steel fucking frame of this backpack, and I had to fucking drag it. It was an all timer. I don't want to get into old hunting stories with non-hunters. It's nothing more boring than that. But
did you do the on the first one, like the Red Dawn, where you had to like take a coffee can or a cup and drink the blood?
Well, I shot my first deer when I was 12.
Did you have to do that?
I don't recall that. No, I don't think my dad made me do that. No,
that's bull, man. You need to do it next time, then. Like that's you're discovering the animals if you've never done that. I'm just saying.
I don't know. That's not. Maybe. I'll take a picture if I do.
Cofield, can we get a ruling?
Biting into the heart.
Can we get a ruling?
Not the Red Dawn. You got to do it like was it what's the movie where Brad Pitt goes crazy and he's eating the hearts, and he's
Legends of the Fall. Yeah.
Legends of the Fall. There you go.
He didn't eat the heart. That was, he pulled out his brother's heart and put it in a coffee can. That's a little different. Yeah.
No, but it started didn't that start because when they killed their first animal, they had to eat the heart? That was the start of it.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Do that?
Maybe I'm wrong.
We'll give you the option. You can either eat the heart or drink the blood in a coffee can.
I've got a heart in the freezer right now.
Jesus.
Air fry it. Air fry it.
Air fry. I'm gonna air fry the heart. That yes, I'll do that. Okay. Yep.
I feel like
I will. I'll record it too.
Dan, have you cooked a heart?
I don't do anything exotic, man. Now you can get those at the Brazilian. Remember the Brazilian meat places? They bring the little chicken hearts on the skewer.
Yeah.
You know, like no, I'm good, thanks. No, I don't do anything exotic. I'm very squeamish. I don't eat any of that.
Elk heart, right? Elk heart.
Yes.
The heart I have in the freezer right now is
you just run around with human hearts.
it's an antelope heart, actually.
Oh wow.
From an antelope I killed a couple years ago.
No.
So back to the original part of this convo, and then we'll get out of here. Okay, so there's the Wagyu. So what's so special about the steak, and why is it $36 a pound? Is that what you said?
This one's $125 a pound.
What?
That one right there. So when I went to Tampa 2 weeks ago for the Super Bowl, we just went nuts. You know, I was staying with my buddy, and we did pork belly burn ends. We did a brisket, and then we did Brazilian picanha, and then Wagyu. I believe it's been massaged by virgins. So this what you're looking at is Japanese A5 Wagyu, and it gets massaged. It gets massages. The cow gets massaged while it's alive. And I just said, it's a once in a lifetime thing. We're going crazy, so. I went and we bought, and like five of, we all like shared that steak. But that one that's like once in a lifetime type steak. We just, we bought that one, and we did not put it in the air fryer. I had like a big fire going. It was like, we're men. We're going to fry, we're a big roaring fire. And, we grilled that sucker up and ate it. And it was, what was weird about it? I'd never do it again. It had this aftertaste of buttery that just kind of went on for days. It just went on. Yeah, that was our fire there. But it didn't taste very beefy. It was just like butter. It was just, there was so much marbling in it. It just kind of went on for days. But it's just kind of those once in a lifetime things like, we'll drop $125 on this steak. But you could definitely tell, like we're in the meat shop, and you could, we had the American Wagyu and then that Japanese A5 Wagyu. And it was not even close. Like the marbling, it was like, yeah, you can tell the difference.
That's funny. I was at a steakhouse once. They had Wagyu on there, and me and my wife were celebrating an anniversary, some sort of big deal. And my wife's like, "Oh, I'd really like to try the Wagyu," and I'm like, "Get the Wagyu, do it." And I saw the price on there, and I think it was like $80, and I was like, that's not too bad, right? So my wife orders it, and they're like, "Yeah, how many ounces you want?" She's like, I don't like a lot, like 4 or 5 ounces. And they're like, "Okay, cool. Is it $80 an ounce? It's a $400 steak." So I was like, I'm eating half of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hey, I think I deserve some credit for going in and having the stones to go in the meat shop and asking the guy if I can air fry Wagyu, man. I think that took some stones in it.
I think it took some stones to throw that thing on the open fire pit, man. Like, I don't know. That's scary. I would have gone the old sear, throw it in the oven just to make sure I didn't fuck it all up,
Yeah, no, it came out pretty good. Like I said, we shared it like the whole family. We all kind of, I took kind of the tail part, and then, and like I said, we had picanhas. We had like a bunch of meat to go around for everybody. And actually, my buddy did prefer the picanha over the Wagyu.
Yeah, Kirk, one of our buddies from Kansas City, who's friends with Petro. We do credit card roulette around our fantasy football draft. We'll go out a couple times. We do credit card roulette at multiple dinners. Yeah, Kirk, let's make sure we go out and some of us get the Wagyu, and everyone has to throw in their card. Let's do it. Let's see how they react on a $320 4-ounce Wagyu. Fuck! I want to bet from the football season. I can't even. They won't even complete the bet. I think we're going to go to the place we wanted to go to, but fucking cheap asses.
Well, it's like we're talking about last night. Can't you just go? Don't you have like a steak house you can go to? And they're like, "Hey, Cofield, just tip nice, and everything's on the house."
Yeah, I said we have. I'm not going to brag like it's because I'm some great radio person. I happen to know some of the people there. It's Delmonico at Venetian. So they don't give us the meal for free. They were cool. They're like, here's an appetizer plate that was probably $25, and here's some fucking cake. They're not, here, hey, free steaks for everybody. Like, no.
What? Come on.
You know where I can go? It's actually the most underrated steak place in town. Justin, what's the most underrated steak place in town? If you want a late night steak and it's cheap, it's $13 to $16 for a steak.
Were we tell me about Circus Steakhouse? Is that where you're going with it?
No. It's not a steakhouse. It's Jackson's Bar and Grill. He's got really good, cheap steak prices, and people love that place. You know what? I'll retract it. I don't think Brian would give it to us for free. No, he might actually. He's given me plenty of stuff over the years. Brian's a good guy, but that's the top end steakhouse I could go in and get a decent comp at.
Can I tell the Pritchard steak story?
I don't know the Pritchard steak story.
You were there.
Oh, I was. Well, remind me.
Yeah. So, this is great. So, Mike Pritchard, is he on your station?
Mike is on our group. Yeah, he's on Raider Nation Radio 920. It's our number one station.
So Cofield and Brandon Tierney and we all worked at the Sports Fan Radio Network, and I would call up. Pritchard had just kind of retired playing, but he lived in Vegas, and we had a studio in the Mandalay Bay, and I was a producer, young producer right out of college, and Pritchard would come down, and Tierney was waiting on a parlay to come in. It was a big one, and if it had hit, it was gonna be a nice healthy parlay. And so, of course, we're all excited and we're all spending the money. And, we're like, spending the money in our heads. We're like, yeah, man, we're going to go out for steak. And Pritchard goes, yeah, man, we're going to Sizzler. And
did you really?
And Tierney and Cofield kind of have the sour look like, Sizzler? No, man, we're going to like Roost Chris or something. And Pritchard goes, no, man, Sizzler's good. And we're all like, look at, we're like, dude, you're a millionaire, man. Like, what are you talking about, Sizzler? He's like, I love Sizzler. And I hosted with him.
I was gonna say, Pritch is still a millionaire. You know why he's still a millionaire? Because he didn't go out to exorbitant steak dinners. He invested his money. He's a smart guy.
Right. Well, now of course the bet didn't hit, so we went nowhere. But I hosted with him like a couple years ago because he was at the Fan in Denver. And I was giving him a hard time about that story. He's like, well, here's the deal. That was he played high school football in Las Vegas. He said that was our pregame meal. He just, nostalgia wise, he loved Sizzler, but it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Adam Hill was talking about it a couple weeks ago about places that you thought were really fancy as a kid. And it was like, you get to go there once a year for his family. It was places like Sizzler and Red Lobster, it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hush puppies for us.
Yes.
I think I said that last time. Hush puppies. Yeah, I think they had a steak there, but I like Binions. Binions I saw on there. That's great. Yeah. For a little bit pricier, like Bavette's in the Park MGM. I have had great steaks at Bavette's.
My favorite is Craft Steak. And I was actually going to go downtown to go to a steak place the other day, but the SO's got very. She doesn't have high standards. It's not a bad thing. I'm kind of glad. She's like, I'm not going to pay, we're not going to get a $47 chicken because she doesn't eat steak. So I was actually looking at Yugo's. Yugo's actually raised the price.
Yugo's is awesome.
It's awesome, but they raised the prices a little bit I haven't been there for like 10, 12 years. The prices went up a little bit. So we're looking at steaks now more in the 55 to 75 range. I thought it was a little bit cheaper in the past. Never cheap, but it's awesome. Yeah. The atmosphere there is like second to none.
Yep. And they got those awesome salads, and then you can go right upstairs and smoke a cigar. It's the whole experience right there in one place.
Golden Steer in town, you like it?
No.
Yeah, I went to Golden Steer once. I didn't like the service, and I'm not picky. I just didn't think it was very good. Like if I'm annoyed by the service, I know Dan will make a comment here, but if I'm annoyed by the service, then it's pretty bad because we are like service people stands. My girlfriend and I, so we forgive almost everything. And there was something weird at Golden Steer.
Yeah, I actually like the whole ambient. Being a native, going to Golden Steer has its whole allure to me. I like going in there, but I just have not had what I consider a great steak there. That's what I went there for. So I don't know. It's just not going to be on my. I mean, same. There's a couple of nostalgic places like that, like Bob Taylor's Ranch House out there and right next to where I grew up. Out there off of Rancho and Ann.
Yep.
That when I was a kid, that was a ranch house, right? Like the the cows were still there, right out back, and they made it and put it right up front. And so that place always has a nostalgia for me. But I don't think it's a good steak anymore, if it ever was.
AJ Real says, or Real, whatever, says not good, not good. Dan, are you on this weekend, or are you off this week?
No, I believe I am. I think it should be Saturday. I'll have to check the schedule, but it should be Saturday 11 to 2, and then the easy like Sunday morning edition 8 to 11.
All right, good deal. That was awesome, man. We got to get you on again. That was great.
Thanks, Dan.
Justin. Appreciate it. Justin and I are now going to go work on the Battle Warren Broadcast Center. You want to go work on the studio tonight?
Yeah, bring the big elk head.
We were actually talking before the show about the big elk head and putting it in the studio. So you want to make the studio into just a tribute to all your hunting with giant freaking stuffed heads?
Well, we do have the leather chairs in there that have the very Yellowstone-y sort of appeal. So I'll just start bringing in all my taxidermied heads, and we'll just wrap the room in it and fuck it. They got to offer some soundproofing, right?
Yeah.
Cofield, are you bringing like a tool belt, like a hammer and stuff? You're going to do work?
No, it's all done. No. Justin put all the money into it. He had guys build it out. It's amazing. It's an amazing room. We have to. Here's what's happening. They set it up Mac based, and none of us really know Mac. And I'm sure it's really, really easy. But right now, it's a little bit intimidating to figure out all the technical stuff. So we'll get it. We got it yesterday. We did a show there yesterday, and we're going to start doing podcasts there. And the funny thing is, Justin, I knew you were going to be like, what the fuck? Dan, when we do these shows on the road, right, and we do videos. We do it like this. We do it on StreamYard. So, like at today's remote, we were at Silver Sevens. Well, John Von Tobel is 2 tables away from me. I'm sitting there. We both have our laptops with a camera on, and that's the way, because we don't know how to use this elaborate camera system at Justin's studio yet. So we're all sitting there with little laptops, and then Justin came over to do the show, and I was like, okay, let me set up this tripod with my phone. So it was laptop, phone, laptop, and he's looking around. He's like, God damn it. He didn't say that, but like he's looking at these cameras and this great remote system. And I'm like, well, we got to work on it. I don't know how to use it yet.
Nice.
I'm just going golfing tomorrow. I'm not thinking about the podcast studio. I'm not thinking about acoustic panels or LED lighting.
You're a real radio guy. You're a real podcaster now.
I'm just surprised I understand what a mixer is now. I mean, I didn't go to school for this shit. And I'm like, oh fuck! I got a remote control cameras, a mixer. I got I don't know what, Black Magic something or other. I don't know what's going on.
Dan, explain to him of how many board ops you've worked with over the years. They're capable. They're not exactly geniuses though. So we'll figure it out.
I would never say that. They're all fine young men on the way to bright futures and success.
Some are old, man. I don't think Dan was around on Sports Fan Radio Network, but there was a guy. No, you know what? His name was Dan. He was actually Dangerous Dan. He didn't last very long because we had some really crazy guys who worked the overnights, and one guy was a big drug addict, and he tried to beat the shit out of this like 72-year-old board op. I was like, come on, man.
Well, when we were there, we had the one. When I was there, we had the one guy that was there avoiding warrants in another state. And then we had the other guy that we were all afraid that was going to, murder somebody. Because it was Sportsman was on the kind of always on the teetering on the edge of financial ruin. It was like, damn, like when this place goes under, that dude's just going to like go to the trunk of his car and get something to come in and like murder us. You do know that. Yeah, I think it's Bobby Machado. Bobby still works with us at Lotus. Oh, does he?
So it's been a 26-year threat of Bobby walking in like the day he wants to. We're all going to get gunned down.
Yeah,
pleasant stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I got a comment real quick on the commenters up there. We'll get the restaurant stuff coming out soon. I haven't signed yet. We're looking location. We got a lot on the table. I got a fucking podcast studio to get up and running. Okay, we'll get the restaurant up after that. And you guys are talking to all this Northwest talk out there on Elkhorn. Just say I grew up right on the corner of Grand Teton and Tioga. Right, there's a high school that's on the land I grew up on now, Arborview High School. So that it used to be an orchard right there. I lived right across the street. So just the good old horse Horse property days. That's where I grew up.
All right, we want video of the drinking of the blood for the next kill.
Yeah. Well, first I gotta
video.
air fry the heart. I gotta go get the heart out of the deep freezer. Air fry the heart. Bring that in for Cofield.
Yes.
And then, and I got to hunt in August, so I'll drink the blood in August.
I think if Justin figures out the camera system and the mixer on the computer in the studio, he's gonna have to drink blood. That's your.
Oh my god! I'll have a fucking drone follow me everywhere. I'll be steering the drone. I'll be out on the hunt. I'll fucking scout everything out. I'll figure it all out.
Well, I mean, doesn't Cofield though have a degree from the prestigious Rutgers School of Communications? Like, shouldn't he be figuring this stuff out?
I'm 100 years old. Do you think that we were doing Mac-based freaking virtual boards? Do you know that the board in our studio now has like slides on it? And I look at it, I'm like, yeah, that's old, but that's kind of fancy. Like I worked with knobs. I used carts, and like there was no digital editor. I actually started working in radio splicing. Freaking reel to reel. I don't even know how I did it. I'm like, I could do that.
Oh, let me tell you, Dan.
Apple?
Yeah. Cofield couldn't have been any less helpful on the technical aspects of things. He gets up there, he puts his guy in the corner, he's on his phone over sitting down in the other area, like, I don't fucking know. You know, like they'll get it figured out. Those kids will get it figured out.
Did you have interns? What?
Oh, we had a whole team. Working on it. No, Jeff was awesome. Jeff was putting in the time to try to figure it out.
I figured it out 2 days before. The only thing I couldn't figure out. No, I got the mics working. I couldn't figure out there was a little.
Get the fuck out of here!
I did. Justin, I did an hour there like 5 days before that. Now I couldn't hear myself, so I left. But you know, I could hear the studio. I could hear them in the studio. They could hear me on the microphones. I just didn't have local audio, so I was fine. I was close.
Yeah.
I haven't used a Mac, goddamn.